Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we are making Spandauer. They're a very recognizable Danish pastry with wienerbrødsdej or Danish pastry dough, marzipan filling, and either topped with pastry cream or jam. And then around the edge, you'll see a white icing. Strangely enough, you might also find this called bagerens dårlige øje in Denmark, which very unappetizingly translates to the baker's infected eye. So possibly because this resembles an infected eye. Who knows? On that note, if you want to learn how to make Spandauer, keep on watching. Besides making our Danish pastry dough, we're also going to prepare our filling. The filling for the Spandauer consists of 100 grams of marzipan, 50 grams of unsalted butter, and 50 grams of granulated sugar. We're gonna mix this all together in a bowl until it forms a paste. I'm using softened butter here. I also have my marzipan that's been sitting out at room temperature for a little while. I did make this marzipan from scratch, but you can definitely use store-bought as well. This is the consistency we're looking for. I'm gonna set this aside until we're ready to use it. Separately from the filling, we also have our toppings. You will often see Spandauer with pastry cream on top or with a jam. We like to use raspberry jam, and you can definitely do this homemade, but today, just for ease and speed, I'm gonna use a store-bought jam. You can also just add jam to your Spandauer or just use pastry cream. It's really up to you, but we like to do half and half. If you are making these from scratch, it's best to do it the night before, just so that it's all ready to go when the Spandauer need to go in the oven. We have our Danish pastry dough, and it is important to give enough time to make the dough, laminate it, and roll it out. I'm not gonna go through all of the steps for laminating the dough in this video, but you can watch our full video on how to make this dough, and I'll link it somewhere on the screen. Making the dough is the most difficult part of this recipe. Right now, this is after the third and final lamination, and the dough has rested in the fridge for about 20 minutes, and now it's been sitting out at room temperature for 10 minutes. And now we're gonna roll it out to the right thickness for Spandauer. Like in the pastry dough video, I have extra flour here. I'm gonna flour the surface really well. And then put my dough down. At this stage, the dough is quite delicate, so just be aware of any tears that you might get, and make sure to add a little bit of flour so that it doesn't get any worse. If the dough is resisting a lot, I would recommend just set a timer for 10 minutes, walk away, and then come back, and hopefully it will be easier to roll out. This is about 16 inches in length, and I'm actually going to cut it in half. Set half of the dough aside in the fridge to rest while we work with one half of the dough. And this is really just because I find it easier to roll out a little bit at a time. All right, this is going in the fridge. We're gonna keep working with the first half of the dough. This is rolled out. It's between 3/16 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch thick. And I'm gonna trim up the edges so that everything is even. And you can save the scraps and just roll them up and make different shapes and bake them off separately. That way you don't waste any of it. All right, it's trimmed up and it's about 12 inches long by 8 inches wide. And we're gonna cut this into 6 squares, starting by making a guideline halfway across, and then 1/3 of the way up, and another 1/3 of the way up. Now we have our marzipan filling. I'm just gonna use half of it for this batch of the dough, but we're adding a dollop of filling to the center of each of the squares. Now, if you do have squares that are a little bit messed up and wrinkly on the bottom, you can just flip them over and put the filling here, and then we'll fold it up and no one will see that part. Okay, now to shape these, we're going to take the corners and fold them up on top of the marzipan and press down. So you're creating a little parcel. And then just press down in the middle, trying to be gentle. And that's the shape that we're going for. I have a parchment paper lined baking sheet, and we're going to transfer our shaped pastries to the baking sheet. I'm going to cover it in some plastic wrap. I'm going to set these aside while we repeat the same process with the second half of the dough. I have both my baking trays ready. The first one is probably around 20 minutes ahead of the second one in terms of proofing time, but that's totally fine with me because I do like to bake these one at a time in the oven. I am expecting these to proof for around 2 hours, maybe a little bit longer. This is what they look like before proofing. And I'll be back in a few hours to show you what we're looking for at the end of the proofing time. About 15 to 20 minutes before your pastries are done rising, preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. It's been about 2.5 hours and our pastries look like they're ready. Let me show you what you're looking for when proofing Danish pastry dough. All right, so you should be able to tell that they have definitely doubled in size. And one of the main tests that we use, which is maybe not the most scientific, but if you kind of tap on the side, you should see the whole pastry wobble a little bit. Before we add any topping, we're going to egg wash the pastries. An egg wash is just 1 egg with a little bit of water whisked together, and it helps give the pastries a nice golden shine on the top. For this first batch, I'm going to add pastry cream to the top. Now, I know we just waited so long to get air into these pastries, but in order to put the topping on, we're actually going to press down with clean hands in the center of each of the pastries and make an indent for about 1 tablespoon of filling to sit on top. And this is just in the center. These are going to go in the oven for around 15 minutes, maybe a few minutes longer if you're not using a convection oven. While the first batch is baking, we're going to prepare our second tray for the oven. For the second batch, I'm using raspberry jam, but you can use whatever fruit jam you like. First batch is out of the oven, and now the second batch is going in for another 15 to 20 minutes. We're going to transfer these pastry cream Spandauer to the cooling rack, but before we do so, let's go over what we're looking for in the baked Danish pastry. So they should be nice and golden brown around the edges. You might see a little bit of marzipan filling running out, but I'm not too worried about that. There is almost no butter leakage around the pastries, which means that they were pretty well proofed and not underproofed. Now that these have cooled down, we're gonna add an icing. This is just a mix of powdered sugar and water. Generally, we really don't measure this. We just add powdered sugar and then a little bit of water at a time until we get to a pretty thick consistency. so excited. It's finally time to try one. You can really taste the marzipan. The dough is super flaky, so good. Thank you so much for watching our video. We hope you make these Spandauer, and we'll see you for the next pastry video. Bye!